of Howard Zinn. We're going to speak to Nancy Snow. She's an author and professor at Syracuse University, and she knew Mr. Zinn for 12 years. Nancy, Howard Zinn said, quote, "Patriotism is not the obedience to government. Patriotism is the obedience to principles for which the government is supposed to stand." What do you think he meant by this?
Well, he meant that really he loved the Declaration of Independence as opposed to the Constitution, because he really believed that it was only the people who could put a check on government power and also corporate power. He was never really fond of any concentration of power, and whether that was in New York or Washington, Wall Street in New York, or the White House or Congress in Washington, D.C. He said no matter who's in office or who's serving on Wall Street, we've got to continue to monitor those in power and stay true to our principles. He was somebody who had served his country in World War II, and he saw firsthand. He got the benefit of government in that he earned his PhD through the GI Bill, but at the same time, he saw that there was a loosening of that social contract between the government and the people. We've seen in the last 60 years the decline in labor participation and workers' rights and a view from the ground up. We've seen an increased concentration of power, and this is what Howard Zinn reminded us about on a continual basis. He never gave up being a great teacher.
And Nancy, you also are a professor and you knew Mr. Zinn. Talk to us a little bit about kind of some things that you knew about his story. He was known for telling other people's story, but what can you tell us about his own?
Well, I know that he had an incredible sense of humor, and I recall one time when I went to hear him talk to a group of high school students, and this was in Orange County, California. It was not yet a year after 9/11. And a young person got up and said, "Mr. Zinn, you seem to hate the government and hate America." And Howard just said with a wry smile, he said, "I don't really hate America. The government I'm not so sure about, but America I love very much." And he kind of got the kids, he gave them a sense of awareness that you can challenge people in power and that you don't always have to be so obedient. This is somebody who helped to integrate the lunch counters in the South during the civil rights. He didn't just write books. He really lived what he was writing about.
And let's talk briefly about the book that we know him so well for, People's History of the United States. I know this was something that I read in early college, and it really opened my eyes about the way things are spun, the way history is spun to us as junior high school students and high school students. Then you read this and you say, oh, this is new.
Right. He wrote this book in response to his students. Like I said earlier, he never gave up being a teacher to his very end. He was about to give another talk. He was constantly doing interviews. I knew him to be completely accessible, and I'm probably one amongst thousands of people who were in contact with him. But he did this because students came to him and said, "Professor Zinn, the things that you talk about in the classroom, I can't find any books that really document this history." And so finally, he couldn't find the books either. He had done this research on his own, and he said, "I'm going to have to write this book." So that came out in 1980 and has since sold millions of copies, and it's really become a manual for activism. But really, the person was a very humble, down-to-earth, gentle soul, and he will be thoroughly missed in America. There's no one like Howard Zinn, and we'll never have anybody like him again.
All right, Nancy Snow, author and professor at Syracuse University. Thanks so much.